The transport ship landed on the dusty surface of Training World 7. The ground shook as the heavy doors opened. Soldiers from 12 different species walked out into the hot sun. They came from every corner of the galaxy. They came to prove themselves in the greatest military exercise of the year. Captain stepped out last. She was a small woman with short black hair and calm eyes. Behind her walked Sergeant and the rest of her human squad. There were only 15 of them, 15 humans among 3,000 alien warriors. The other species looked at them and whispered. "Look at them," said a soldier to his friend. "So small, so weak." They were the largest species in the galaxy. They stood over 3 meters tall. Their bodies were covered in thick gray skin that could stop most weapons. Their arms were as thick as tree trunks. Their eyes glowed yellow in the sunlight. For 500 years, no species had beaten them in battle. They were the galactic's strongest, and everyone knew it. Commander was the leader of the forces. He was even bigger than his soldiers. Old scars covered his face and arms. Each scar was a story of battle and victory. He had killed more enemies than he could count. He had never lost a fight. When he walked, the ground seemed to shake under his weight. Watched the humans walk across the landing area. He made a sound of disgust. "Humans," he said to his second officer, "why do they even come to these exercises? They are not warriors. They are prey animals pretending to be predators." Nodded his large head. "I heard they requested the rear position again, Commander." Laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound. "Of course they did. They always hide in the back. They let real warriors do the fighting while they stay safe." He spat on the ground. "Cowards, all of them." Captain heard the laughter. She did not react. Her face stayed calm and empty. Sergeant walked beside her. He was a tall man with a thin scar on his chin. He had been a soldier for 20 years. He had seen many things. "They are laughing at us again," said quietly. "Let them laugh," replied. "Laughing soldiers are not thinking soldiers." Smiled a little. "Yes, Captain." The exercise was simple in design. All the species would work together to attack an enemy base. The base was defended by combat robots. The robots were programmed to fight like real enemies. They would shoot real weapons. They would try to kill. This was not a game. Soldiers could die here. The planning meeting happened inside a large metal building. Representatives from each species sat around a massive table. Holographic maps floated in the air, showing the target base and the surrounding terrain. Commander stood at the head of the table. He was in charge because his species was the strongest. That was how things worked in the galaxy. The strong led. The weak followed. "The attack will begin at dawn," announced. "My warriors will lead the front assault. We will break through the main gate that will provide air support." He pointed to a group of tall, thin creatures with 4 arms. "That will handle the east flank." Small, fast reptiles nodded their heads. Continued to assign positions to each species. He gave them important jobs. He gave them chances to prove themselves. Finally, he came to the humans. He looked at with his glowing yellow eyes. "And the humans will stay in the back, as always." Some of the other species laughed quietly. A commander shook his head with pity. An officer made a hissing sound that meant amusement. Stood up. She was so much smaller than everyone else in the room, but her voice was clear and strong. "We accept the rear position," she said simply. Leaned forward, his massive hands pressed against the table. "Do you not want to fight, human? Do you not want glory?" "We want to complete the mission," replied. "The rear position serves that purpose." "The rear position serves your cowardice," said. "Every year humans come to these exercises. Every year you hide in the back. You let others bleed and die while you watch from safety." He stood up to his full height. "I have fought 1,000 battles. I have never seen a human at the front, not once." The room was quiet. Everyone watched. Did not look away from his eyes. "We have our reasons, Commander." "Reasons?" Laughed again. "The only reason is fear. You are afraid. Your species is afraid. You do not belong among warriors. His hand moved toward his weapon, raised one finger, and he stopped. We will take the rear position, said again. If that is all, Commander, my squad needs to prepare. Waved his massive hand. Go, prepare to hide. The humans left the building. Outside, the sun was setting. The sky turned orange and red, walked toward the human camp without looking back. Captain said, every year they mock us. Every year they call us cowards. Why do we never show them the truth? Stopped walking. She looked up at the darkening sky. Because the truth is not for showing, the truth is for using, when the time comes. And when will that time come? Started walking again, when it needs to. The human camp was small and simple. 15 soldiers, 15 tents, no flags, no decorations, nothing to show off. The other species had large camps with bright lights and loud music. They celebrated before the battle even started. They drank and sang and boasted about the enemies they would kill. The humans sat quietly and checked their equipment. Private was the youngest member of the squad. She was only 22 years old. This was her first joint exercise. She cleaned her rifle with careful hands. Sergeant, she said to, why do they hate us so much? Sat down beside her. He was checking his own weapon. They don't hate us, they don't understand us. There is a difference. They think we are weak. Yes, but we are not weak. Looked at her, his eyes were serious. No, we are not weak, but we are also not strong in the way they understand strength. The measure power by size and muscle, the measure it by speed and flight, the measure it by numbers and coordination. He put down his rifle. Humans measure power differently. How do we measure it? Asked. Before could answer, Captain walked over. She had been listening. We measure power by results, said, not by appearance, not by noise, not by how many people are watching. She sat down with her squad. They want to stand at the front because that is where everyone can see them. They want glory. They want songs written about their bravery. And us? Asked. We want to win, said simply. We want everyone to go home alive. Glory means nothing if you are dead. Songs mean nothing if your friends are buried in the ground. The squad nodded. They understood. They had all been taught the same lesson since they were children. Specialist was cleaning his sniper rifle. He was the best shot in the squad, maybe the best shot in the entire human military. Captain, do you think something will go wrong tomorrow? Was quiet for a moment. Something always goes wrong. That is the nature of battle. The question is not whether something will go wrong. The question is who will be ready when it does. And we will be ready, said. Yes, we will be in the back. We will see everything. We will watch every flank, every shadow, every movement. And when something goes wrong, we will be there to fix it. The night grew darker. The other camps grew louder. They were singing war songs. The sound carried across the training ground like thunder. They sang about crushing enemies and tearing down walls. They sang about blood and victory. The humans did not sing. They ate a simple meal. They checked their weapons one more time. They studied the maps until they knew every rock and tree. Then they slept. But did not sleep. She sat outside her tent and looked at the stars. The galaxy was so big, so many species, so many different ways to fight and live and die. Humans were not the strongest. They were not the fastest. They did not have thick skin or sharp claws or powerful wings. They were soft and small and breakable. But they were still here. After millions of years, after countless wars and disasters, humans were still here. They had survived when stronger species had not. They had won when victory seemed impossible. The other species did not understand how. They looked at humans and saw weakness. They saw creatures that should have died long ago. They saw prey that somehow refused to be eaten. They did not see the truth. The truth was simple. Humans did not survive by being strong. They survived by being smart. They survived by watching and waiting. They survived by letting others make mistakes first. Tomorrow the exercise would begin. They would charge at the front. They would be loud and powerful and terrifying. They would feel like gods of war. And the humans would sit in the back, watching, waiting, ready. Finally went to sleep. Her last thought was of her grandmother, who had been a soldier too. Her grandmother had taught her many things, but one lesson stood above all others. The loudest warrior is the first to die, her grandmother had said. The quietest warrior is the last one standing. Tomorrow would prove if that lesson was still true. Somewhere in the darkness, robots powered up inside the target base, their weapons loaded, their sensors activated. They were programmed to win. They were programmed to kill. They did not know about the humans in the back. They would learn. The sun rose over Training World 7. Red light spread across the dusty ground. The air was cold and still. It was the perfect morning for battle. Commander stood at the front of his army. 3,000 warriors from 12 species stretched out behind him. They filled the valley like a river of steel and flesh. Weapons gleamed in the early light. Armor reflected the red sky. Raised his massive fist. Today, we show the galaxy what real warriors can do. Today, we crush our enemies. Today, we earn glory that will last forever. The roared. The sound shook the ground. Other species joined them, adding their own war cries to the noise. The valley filled with the sound of warriors ready to kill. At the very back of the formation, the humans stood in silence. Captain watched the front lines through her binoculars. She studied the way the different species positioned themselves. She noticed the gaps between units. She saw the places where communication might break down. "They are too far ahead," she said quietly. "They will outrun their support." Sergeant nodded. "They always do. They want to be first through the gate." "The air units are positioned wrong too. They will block each other's sight lines." "Should we tell them?" Lowered her binoculars. "They would not listen. We are the cowards who hide in the back, remember." The army began to move. Led the charge himself. His massive legs carried him faster than seemed possible for such a large creature. His warriors followed, spreading out across the valley floor. They moved toward the enemy base like a wave of destruction. The target base sat on a hill 1 kilometer ahead. Its walls were thick metal. Its towers held automated weapons. Inside, hundreds of combat robots waited. They had been programmed with the strategies of a dozen different enemy civilizations. They would not surrender. They would not retreat. They would fight until destroyed. The first shots came from the base towers. Energy beams cut through the air. A soldier fell, his chest burned through. Then another. Then 5 more. "Forward," shouted. "Do not stop, break through." They reached the base walls first. They slammed into the metal with their bare hands. Dents appeared. The walls shook, but they did not fall. More weapons fired from the towers. Aircraft swooped down, trying to destroy the guns. 2 of them collided in the confusion and crashed into the ground. Fire and smoke rose into the sky. "Something is wrong," said. She was still watching from the back. Her eyes moved constantly, taking in every detail. "The robots are fighting harder than expected," observed. "The exercise parameters must have been increased." "No, look at the pattern of fire. Those are not random shots. They are targeting specific units, specific leaders." His voice grew cold. "Someone them." Before she could say more, new ships appeared in the sky. They came from behind the mountains. Dozens of them, then hundreds. They were not training ships. They were not part of the exercise. They were black and sharp and covered with weapons. Raiders. There were pirates and killers. They attacked colony worlds and mining stations. They took what they wanted and destroyed the rest. They were not supposed to be here. No one had expected them. But here they were. "Ambush," someone screamed. "We are under attack, real attack." The ships opened fire. Missiles rained down on the combined army. Explosions tore through the ranks. Soldiers who had been charging forward suddenly found themselves dying. Commander looked up at the sky. For the first time in his life, he did not know what to do. His army was caught between the base and the raiders. They had no cover. They had no plan. "Fall back," he ordered. "Retreat to the landing area." But they had planned well. More ships appeared behind the army, cutting off the retreat. They were surrounded. 3,000 warriors trapped in a valley with enemies on all sides. They tried to fight. They fired their weapons at the sky. A few ships exploded, but for every one they destroyed, 10 more took its place. The raiders had brought an entire fleet. Grabbed his communication device. All units, we are under real attack. This is not an exercise. Form defensive positions." But the different species could not work together. The wanted to charge. The wanted to scatter. They could not decide whether to fight in the air or on the ground. Orders overlapped. Soldiers ran in different directions. The carefully organized army became a confused mess. "They are falling apart," said. He stood beside, watching the chaos. "Without their front-line advantage, they do not know what to do." Was already making decisions. Her mind worked through possibilities faster than a computer. They wanted this. They waited for the exercise. They knew all the strong species would be in one place. They knew we would be focused on the base. A trap. Yes, and we walked right into it. Private moved closer to her captain. Her young face was pale with fear, but her hands were steady on her weapon. "What do we do, Captain?" Looked at her squad, 15 humans, 15 soldiers trained for exactly this kind of situation. They had been laughed at. They had been mocked. They had been called cowards. But they were not dead. "We do what we always do," said. "We watch, we wait, we find the moment, and then we act." In the center of the valley was fighting for his life. Ground troops had joined the attack. They poured out of landing ships with rifles blazing. The raiders were smaller than, but they were fast and they were many. Crushed one with his bare hands. He tore another in half, but for every one he killed, more appeared. His soldiers fell around him. The greatest warriors in the galaxy were dying like animals. "Where is our air support?" He roared into his communicator. "Where are the—" "Shot down," came the reply. "Most of our aircraft are destroyed." "The—" "Scattered, their commander is dead." Felt something he had never felt before. He felt fear. Real, true fear. Not the small fear of losing a battle, the deep fear of losing everything. He looked around at his dying army. He saw soldiers he had trained. He saw warriors he had fought beside for decades. They were being slaughtered, and he could not stop it. A missile hit the ground near him. The explosion threw him backward. His ears rang. His vision blurred. When he stood up, his left arm was hanging at a bad angle. Broken. Commander ran to his side. The second officer was wounded too. Blue blood covered half his face. "We cannot hold. We must surrender." "Do not surrender," said, but his voice was weak. He knew the truth. Surrender would not save them anyway. They did not take prisoners. They took slaves or corpses. Another wave of missiles fell. More soldiers died. The ground troops pushed closer. Their cruel laughter filled the air. Lifted his remaining good arm. He still held his weapon. If he was going to die, he would die fighting. That was all he had left. And then something strange happened. The ship started exploding. Not from weapons fire, not from missiles, they just exploded, one after another. Balls of fire lit up the sky like new suns. Looked around in confusion. What is happening? Who is doing this? At the back of the battlefield, Captain lowered her targeting laser. Good shots. Specialist smiled grimly. He had fired 3 rounds in the last 30 seconds. Each round was a specially designed armor-piercing bullet with a miniature tracking device. Each bullet had hit the fuel lines of a command ship. 3 ships, 3 explosions, and now the rest of the fleet was losing coordination. "The other squads are in position," reported. "Jin's team has reached the eastern ridge. Team is at the western canyon." Nodded. While everyone else had panicked, the humans had moved. They had slipped through the chaos like shadows. Now they held the high ground on both sides of the valley. They had clear sight lines to every enemy position. "Begin Phase 2, said into her communicator. From the ridges, human soldiers opened fire. They did not spray bullets randomly like panicked soldiers. They chose each target carefully. They hit officers first, then communication equipment, then heavy weapons. The ground troops started dying. They had expected easy prey. They had not expected accurate fire from positions they thought were empty. "What is this?" a captain screamed. "Where are they shooting from?" He never got an answer. A bullet found his head a second later. In the valley, the other species began to notice the change. The pressure on them was decreasing. The attack was faltering. "Someone is helping us," said, "but who?" Looked toward the back of the battlefield, the place where the humans had been positioned, the place where the cowards were supposed to hide. He saw muzzle flashes on the ridges. He saw soldiers falling. He saw a pattern of attack so precise, so controlled, that it could only come from one source. "The humans," he whispered. The word spread through the surviving soldiers. Humans. The humans were fighting back. The cowards were saving them. But they were not just saving them, they were winning. Watched the battle turn. The fleet was in disarray after losing its command ships. The ground troops were being picked apart by accurate fire. The trap was becoming a disaster for the trappers. "Phase 3, she ordered. "Push them into the kill zone." Her soldiers began to move again. They did not charge like they did not swarm like they moved slowly and carefully, always staying hidden, always controlling the angles. They had nowhere to go. They tried to retreat to their ships, but human snipers shot down anyone who got close. They tried to dig in and hold position, but grenades found them in their holes. They tried to surrender, but no one was listening anymore. The battle lasted 3 more hours. By the end, not a single raider was left alive on Training World 7. Commander stood in the middle of the valley. Bodies surrounded him. Some of them were friends. His broken arm throbbed with pain. His entire body ached. But he was alive. He looked up at the ridges where the humans had fought. He could not see them anymore. They had already disappeared, moving back to their original position, back to the back of the formation. Limped over to stand beside him. "Commander, we need to count our losses." "I know what our losses are," said quietly. "I know who saved us." "The humans." "Yes, the humans," shook his massive head slowly. "The cowards who hide in the back. They saved the greatest warriors in the galaxy." Did not know what to say. Neither did. But as he looked at the empty ridges, he began to understand something. Something he had never understood before. Hiding in the back was not the same as being afraid. Staying quiet was not the same as being weak. Sometimes, the most dangerous warrior was the one you forgot about. Sometimes, the real power was in watching and waiting. And sometimes, the soldiers in the back were the only ones who could see the whole battle. Had many questions for the human captain. He just hoped she would give him the answers. The sun was setting on Training World 7. Orange light fell on a valley that had become a graveyard. Thousands of bodies lay scattered across the dusty ground. Smoke rose from destroyed ships and burning equipment. The air smelled like death. Medical teams moved through the chaos. They collected the wounded. They covered the dead. They tried to bring order to a day that had brought only destruction. Captain sat on a rock at the edge of the human camp. She was cleaning her weapon. Her movements were slow and careful. The same movements she had made 1,000 times before. The same movements her grandmother had taught her when she was just a child. The battle was over, but her mind was still working. She was thinking about what had happened. She was thinking about what would happen next. "Captain." She looked up. Commander was walking toward her. His broken arm was wrapped in medical bandages. His face was covered in cuts and bruises. He looked like a warrior who had walked through hell. Behind him, the other alien commanders followed. The leader, whose name was the commander, a small reptile called representatives from every species that had fought today. They came in silence. They came with questions in their eyes. Stood up, she was so much smaller than any of them, but she did not look small. "Commander," she said calmly, "how can I help you?" Stopped a few meters away. His yellow eyes stared down at her. For a long moment he did not speak. He just looked at this tiny human who had saved his life. "I came to understand," he finally said. "I came to ask questions." "Ask." "During the battle, my soldiers panicked. The greatest warriors in the galaxy ran like scared animals, but your humans did not panic. They moved like they had expected the attack. They fought like they had planned for this exact moment." Paused. "How?" Finished cleaning her weapon. She put it back together with quick, easy movements. "We always expect attacks, Commander. We assume every exercise could become a real battle. We assume every ally could become an enemy. We assume everything will go wrong." That is a dark way to think. It is a human way to think. Our history taught us to be ready for disaster. Every generation of humans has faced wars and plagues and catastrophes. Those who expected peace died. Those who expected trouble survived. The commander stepped forward. He was tall and thin, with 4 long arms and golden feathers covering his body. "But how did you know where to go? How did you reach those ridges so quickly?" Sergeant walked over from the camp. He had heard the question. "We studied the terrain before the exercise started. We memorized every hill and canyon. We identified all the positions where a small force could control a larger battle." "Why?" asked. "Because that is what we do. We look for advantages. We find the places others ignore. The back of the formation gives us time to think and space to move. While everyone else charges forward, we study the field." Made a rumbling sound in his chest. "So you were not hiding, you were watching." "Yes." "Watching what?" Looked directly into his eyes. "Everything. The way your soldiers move, the gaps in your formation, the timing of your communications, the weaknesses in your strategy." She paused. "And the places where enemies might attack." The alien commanders exchanged looks. They had spent their whole lives believing humans were weak, cowardly, unworthy of respect. Now they were hearing something very different. "You saw the coming?" asked. The commander's voice was high and sharp. "Before they attacked?" "Not exactly, but we knew something was wrong. The robots in the training base were fighting too well. Their targeting was too perfect. Someone had changed the programming. That meant someone had access to the base systems. That meant someone else was watching the exercise. And from that, you guessed an ambush." "We did not guess. We prepared for the possibility. When they appeared, we were already moving." Sat down heavily on a nearby rock. The stone cracked under his weight. He suddenly looked very tired, very old. 500 years, he said quietly. For 500 years there have been the greatest warriors in the galaxy. We have won every war. We have crushed every enemy. We believed we were the strongest because our bodies were the strongest." He looked at his broken arm. "Today, my body failed me. My strength meant nothing against missiles and ambushes. I would be dead now if not for you." Did not respond. She waited. "How many humans died today?" asked. "None." The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. "None," repeated. "Impossible. We lost thousands. Every species lost soldiers, but the humans lost none. We had 3 injuries, minor wounds, no deaths." Stood up suddenly. His massive body towered over, but his posture was not aggressive. It was confused, almost desperate. "How?" he demanded. "How can 15 soldiers fight through that battle and lose no one? We had 3,000 warriors. We lost 800, 800 dead, and you lost none." Was quiet for a moment. She looked past at the sunset. The sky was beautiful, red and gold and purple, so peaceful after such a violent day. When I was young, she finally said, my grandmother told me a story. She said that long ago humans hunted a creature called the mammoth. Mammoths were huge, much bigger than humans, much stronger. They could kill a human with one step. The aliens listened carefully. But humans hunted them anyway. Do you know how? Shook his head. They did not attack the mammoths directly. They watched the herds. They learned where the mammoths traveled. They found places where the ground was weak or the cliffs were close. Then they waited for the right moment. They used fire and noise to drive the mammoths toward danger. The mammoths were stronger, but the humans were smarter. Look back at. We have been hunting mammoths for a very long time, Commander. We have learned that strength is not the only kind of power. Sometimes patience is power. Sometimes position is power. Sometimes the ability to see the whole picture is more valuable than the ability to break things. The commander was silent for a long time. The other aliens waited. No one knew what to say. Finally spoke. I owe you my life, Captain. I owe you the lives of many of my soldiers. That is a debt I do not know how to repay. You do not owe us anything, replied. We are allies, we fight together. But we have not treated you as allies. We have treated you as lesser beings, as cowards. His voice was heavy with something that might have been shame. We were wrong. Yes, you were. Did not soften her words. She did not try to make feel better. She simply told the truth. Stepped forward again. Captain, I must ask something. If you are so good at reading battles, why do you never take command? Why do you let species like the lead when you clearly understand warfare better than we do? It was a good question. All the aliens wanted to know the answer. Thought about it carefully before responding. Because leading is not our goal. Winning is our goal. Surviving is our goal. Protecting our people is our goal. She paused. If we led, others would not follow. You have seen how the galaxy treats humans. We are small. We are weak-looking. No one would accept orders from us. So you let us believe we are in charge, said slowly, while you control the outcome from behind. We do not control anything. We simply prepare for everything. We put ourselves where we can be most useful. Usually, that is in the back. Made a sound that was almost a laugh. The galactic's strongest species learned a lesson today. The warriors who sit in the front are seen by everyone. The warriors who sit in the back see everyone. Yes. And which is more valuable? Finally smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible. That depends on whether you want to be remembered or whether you want to be alive. The sun finished setting. Darkness spread across the valley. Stars appeared in the sky above. Somewhere in the distance, rescue ships were landing. Reinforcements were arriving. The crisis was ending. But something had changed. Looked at the human captain one more time. He wanted to say something, something important, but he did not have the words. Instead, he simply bowed his head. It was a gesture of respect that only gave to equals. In 500 years, no had ever bowed to a human. The other commanders watched in shock. Then one by one they bowed too, all of them, 12 species showing respect to a single human woman. Bowed back, it was the proper response. Tomorrow we must clean up this mess, she said. We must count our dead. We must repair our equipment. We must find out how they knew about the exercise. Yes, agreed, there will be much work. And many questions to answer. One question I already know the answer to, said. What question? Why humans sit in the back. The giant alien straightened to his full height. Because that is where you can save everyone, including fools like me who stand at the front. Nodded slightly. Sleep well, Commander. Tomorrow will be difficult. Turned and walked away. The other commanders followed. They disappeared into the darkness, returning to their camps. Sergeant appeared at side. That was unexpected. Was it? The strongest species in the galaxy bowed to you. I have never seen that before. Respect is not given freely, said. It must be earned. Today we earned it. And tomorrow, looked at the stars. So many stars, so many worlds, so many battles yet to fight. Tomorrow we prepare for the next disaster, because there will always be a next disaster, and when it comes, we will be ready. She walked back to the camp. Her soldiers were waiting. They were tired but unbroken. 15 humans who had changed the way the galaxy saw their species. It was not a permanent change. Knew that. In time, the other species would forget. They would go back to laughing at humans. They would go back to calling them cowards. But that was fine. Let them laugh. Let them forget. The humans would still be there, in the back, watching, waiting, ready. That was enough. That was always enough. 3 days had passed since the ambush. The dead had been buried. The wounded had been treated. The damaged equipment had been removed from the valley, but the questions remained. A council was called in the main command building. Every species sent their highest-ranking officers. They gathered around the same table where the exercise had been planned, the same table where had laughed at the humans. No one was laughing now. Sat at the head of the table. His broken arm was healing inside a medical device. The cuts on his face had been cleaned and sealed, but the wounds to his pride would take longer to repair. The investigation has produced results, he announced. We know how they found us. A holographic image appeared above the table. It showed an officer. His feathers were gray with age. His eyes were cold and empty. Wing Commander said. He sold our information to the. He gave them the location of the exercise. He gave them the timing of the attack. He even the training robots to distract us. Made a sound of shock and anger. Betrayed us, one of our own. They paid him well. He thought he would escape before the attack began. He was wrong. Waved his hand and the image changed. It showed a body lying in the wreckage of a crashed ship. He died with the first wave of our counterattack. The room was silent. Betrayal was always painful. Betrayal from an ally was worse. This council is not just about the traitor, continued. This council is about what we learned, about what we failed to see. He turned his yellow eyes toward Captain, and about what the humans showed us. All the alien commanders looked at. She sat at the far end of the table, the same position she had taken in every meeting. The back, always the back. Captain said, I have a request. Explain to this council why humans fight the way they do. Explain why you sit in the back, not with stories or philosophy. Explain with military doctrine. Stood up slowly. She looked around the table at 12 species who had spent centuries dismissing her kind. 12 species who now wanted to understand. Very well, she said. Sergeant, the display, please. Worked the holographic controls. A tactical map appeared above the table. It showed the battlefield from 3 days ago, the positions of every unit, the movements of every soldier. This is our standard formation, began. Humans at the rear, other species at the front and sides. She highlighted the positions with colored lights. Most of you believe this formation exists because humans are weak, because we are afraid, because we want others to fight for us. She paused. Her eyes were steady and calm. You are wrong. This formation exists because it is the most effective way to win battles. She changed the display. Now it showed sight lines. Yellow beams stretched from the human position to every part of the battlefield. From the back, we can see everything. We see your front lines. We see your flanks. We see the places you cannot see because you are too busy fighting. We see the mistakes you are making before you realize you are making them. The alien commanders studied the display. They had never thought about it this way. More importantly, continued, we see your blind spots. Every warrior has blind spots, places they cannot watch while they focus on the enemy in front of them. When your blind spots are attacked, you die, unless someone is watching. She changed the display again. This time it showed the moment when they attacked, Red markers appeared behind the Allied army. They came from behind. They attacked your blind spots. Every other species was focused on the training base. You were looking forward. They came from the direction no one was watching. Except the humans, said quietly. Except the humans. We were watching the rear. We were watching the flanks. We were watching the sky. When they appeared, we saw them immediately. We had time to respond while you were still trying to understand what was happening. Raised one of his 4 hands. But why do you not simply tell us about our blind spots? Why do you not share this information so we can protect ourselves? We have tried, replied. For 50 years, humans have offered to train other species in our methods. Every time we are refused, other species believe their way is better. The believe strength wins battles. The believe speed wins battles. The believe numbers win battles. She shook her head slowly. None of those things win battles. Awareness wins battles. Preparation wins battles. Seeing the whole picture wins battles. She looked directly at. The strongest warrior in the galaxy is worthless if he does not see the knife coming for his back. Nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand. Let me show you something else, said. She changed the display to show the human movements during the battle. Small blue dots moved through the chaos. They looked like water flowing around rocks. This is what my squad did while your armies were falling apart. The display moved forward in time. The blue dots did not run toward the fighting. They did not charge the enemy. Instead, they slipped around the edges of the battle. They found high ground. They found cover. They positioned themselves where they could strike without being struck. We did not fight like you, explained. We did not try to match the soldier for soldier. We fought like humans have always fought. We found the weak points. We targeted the important enemies. We made each shot count. The display showed the command ships exploding. It showed the officers falling. It showed the enemy formation collapsing from the inside out. Your armies are like hammers, said. You smash everything in front of you. Human armies are like knives. We cut the things that matter. We kill the commanders. We destroy the communications. We remove the enemy's ability to fight as a unit. Surgical, said. The commander's voice was thoughtful. You perform surgery on the battlefield. Yes, that is a good way to describe it. Leaned forward. Captain, I have another question. If your methods are so effective, why have humans not conquered the galaxy? Why are you not the dominant species? It was a dangerous question, an insulting question, but did not seem offended. Because we do not want to conquer the galaxy, she answered simply. Conquest is expensive. It requires holding territory, managing populations, fighting endless rebellions. Humans have learned that empires always fall. The species that builds the biggest empire simply has the farthest to fall when it collapses. Then what do you want? Survival, that is all we have ever wanted. We want to live. We want our children to live. We want our species to continue. Spread her hands. We do not need to rule the galaxy to achieve this. We only need to be useful enough that other species will not destroy us, and dangerous enough that they will not try. The room fell silent again. This was a way of thinking that none of the other species had considered. They thought about power, about glory, about domination. Humans thought about survival. There is one more thing I must explain, said. One more reason why we sit in the back. She turned off the tactical display. The hologram disappeared. Now she was just a small woman standing in front of a room full of giants. When you put soldiers in the front, they fight. They charge. They attack. That is what frontline soldiers do. But when everything goes wrong, frontline soldiers die. They are the first to face the enemy. They are the first to fall. She took a breath. Humans cannot afford to lose soldiers. We do not breed as fast as the. We do not heal as quickly as the. Every human who dies in battle is a human we cannot replace, so we do not put ourselves in positions where death is likely. You preserve your people, said. We preserve everything. Our people, our knowledge, our experience. Looked around the table. How many of your veterans died 3 days ago? How many soldiers with decades of experience were killed in the first minutes of the ambush? No one answered. The number was high. Everyone knew it. Those soldiers cannot be replaced. Their skills, their instincts, their ability to train the next generation, all of that died with them. His voice grew harder. Human armies do not waste veterans. We put them where they can survive. We put them where they can see the whole battle. We put them in the back. Stood up from his chair. His massive body towered over the table, but his posture was not aggressive. It was respectful. "Captain," he said formally, "I have been a warrior for 200 years. I have led armies across a dozen worlds. I thought I understood war." He paused. "I was wrong. You have shown me that there are ways of fighting I never considered, ways of thinking I never imagined. I have a request to make," he continued. "When this council ends, I would like to speak with you privately. I want to learn more. I want to understand how humans think, if you are willing to teach." Nodded slightly. "I am willing. And I have another request, not just for you, for all humans." Looked around the table. The other commanders watched with intense interest. "The next joint exercise is in 6 months. I want humans in the planning meetings. Real planning, not sitting in the corner while others make decisions. I want your species to help design our strategies." "That is a significant change," said carefully. "It is necessary. They almost destroyed us because we were arrogant, because we ignored the species who saw things we could not see." Made a rumbling sound in his chest. "I will not let arrogance kill my soldiers again." The other commanders began to speak. Most of them agreed with. They had all lost friends in the ambush. They had all seen how the humans fought. They wanted that knowledge for themselves. Listened to the discussion. She did not interrupt. She did not argue. She simply waited until everyone had spoken. When the room grew quiet again, she spoke. "We will help. Humans have always been willing to help. We only needed to be asked." She looked at each commander in turn. "But understand this. Our methods are not easy. They require patience. They require humility. They require admitting that strength is not enough." "Are you saying they lack humility?" asked. There was a small smile on his face. "I am saying that every species believes it is special. Every species believes its way is the best way. Humans have learned that there is no best way. There is only the way that works." Allowed herself a small smile in return. "If you can accept that, we can teach you many things." "Then we will accept it," said. "We will learn." The council ended an hour later. Decisions had been made. Plans had been formed. For the first time in galactic history, humans would be equal partners in military planning. It was a small step, but small steps could lead to great journeys. As the commanders filed out of the building, remained behind, waited with her. "That was unexpected," he said. "Was it?" "The strongest species in the galaxy just asked us to teach them. That has never happened before." Looked out the window. The valley was clean now. The bodies were gone, but she could still see them in her mind. Thousands of dead soldiers who might have lived if they had listened sooner. "It happened because people died," she said quietly. "Change always requires death. That is the sad truth of the universe. No one learns until they have lost something. And now they have lost something. Yes, now they are ready to learn." Turned away from the window. "Come, we have work to do. 6 months is not a long time to teach an entire galaxy how to think differently." They walked out together. Behind them, the sun set on another day. The stars came out one by one, lighting up the darkness. Somewhere among those stars, enemies were planning. Somewhere, new threats were growing. But the humans would be ready. They always were. And now, perhaps, they would not be alone in their readiness. That was the best outcome could hope for. It was enough. 6 months had passed since the ambush on Training World 7. The galaxy had changed. Not dramatically, not obviously, but the change was real. Captain stood on the observation deck of the flagship Eternal Thunder. It was a warship, the largest in their fleet. Through the massive windows, she could see 100 other ships floating in formation, ships from 12 different species, the greatest military force ever assembled for a joint exercise. This time, everything was different. "Impressive view," Commander said. He walked up beside her, his heavy footsteps making the deck vibrate. His broken arm had fully healed. New scars joined the old ones on his face, but something about him had changed beyond the physical. "It is," agreed. "I never expected to see this from a command deck." Made a rumbling sound that had learned was laughter. "6 months ago, I would have died before letting a human onto this ship. Now I cannot imagine planning a battle without one." "Things change." "Things change when they must," turned to face her directly. "I wanted to thank you again, not just for saving my life, for what you taught us." Shook her head slightly. "I taught you nothing you did not already know. I only showed you how to see it." The planning sessions over the past months had been intense. Human officers had worked with every species in the Alliance. They had shared their methods, their strategies, their ways of thinking. At first, many aliens had resisted. Old beliefs were hard to change. Old pride was even harder. But slowly, understanding had grown. They learned to watch their flanks. They learned to coordinate their air units more carefully. They learned that numbers meant nothing without positioning. Every species learned something about themselves they had never seen before. And they learned something about humans. "The exercise begins in 1 hour," said. "Are you ready?" Smiled slightly. "I am always ready, that is the human way." "This time, you will not be in the back." "No, this time we will be everywhere." That was the new arrangement. Human soldiers and officers were spread throughout the entire fleet. Every ship had at least one human observer. Every unit had access to human tactical advice. They were no longer hiding in the rear. They were woven into the fabric of the Alliance itself. Some aliens had complained. They said it was an insult to have humans watching over them. They said it implied they could not be trusted to fight alone. Had silenced those complaints with a single sentence. "The humans watched over us on Training World 7. They saved us all. If watching is an insult, it is an insult I am proud to receive." Now, as the exercise approached, felt something she rarely allowed herself to feel: hope. A door opened behind them. Sergeant entered the observation deck. He was wearing a new uniform. It combined human military standards with design elements, a symbol of the alliance that had formed over the past months. "Captain, the commander wants to speak with you," reported. "Something about the eastern flank positioning." "Tell her I will be there in 10 minutes." Nodded and left. Watched him go. "Your sergeant has become popular among my soldiers. They call him the Shadow Teacher. He has taught many of your warriors how to move quietly, how to watch without being seen. Things they never thought they needed to learn." Paused. "I have a question, one I have wanted to ask for months." "Ask." "On Training World 7, when the battle ended, I asked why humans never boasted about their abilities. Your answer has stayed with me every day since. Do you remember what you said?" Thought back to that night, the sunset, the dead, the weight of everything that had happened. "I said that those who talk do not fight. Those who fight do not need to talk." Yes, that answer. I did not understand it at first, but I think I understand it now. Looked out at the assembled fleet, all those ships, all those warriors, all those species finally working together. Humans have been proving themselves for centuries. You have fought beside us. You have died beside us. You have saved us when we could not save ourselves. But you never demanded recognition. You never asked for glory. Glory is not our goal. I know, that is what I finally understand. Humans do not fight for glory. You fight for something else, something more important. Turn to face her. You fight to make sure everyone goes home. Was quiet for a moment. The giant alien had spoken a truth that humans rarely said out loud, a truth so simple that other species had missed it for generations. "My grandmother was a soldier," she finally said. "She fought in 7 wars. She killed more enemies than I can count. But she never talked about the killing. She only talked about the friends she brought home, the soldiers she saved, the families that were still whole because she made the right decision at the right moment. She sounds like a great warrior." She was not a warrior. She hated that word. She said warriors fight because they love fighting. She fought because she loved the people standing beside her. Eyes grew distant. She died protecting a squad of young soldiers who had walked into an ambush. She could have retreated. She could have saved herself. Instead, she held the enemy back until every one of those soldiers escaped. Bowed his massive head, a hero. She would have hated that word too. She was just a human doing what humans do, protecting our own, whatever the cost. The observation deck was silent. Outside, the stars continued to shine. Ships continued to drift in their perfect formation. The universe continued as it always had. But something had changed between these two beings, a commander and a human captain, the strongest species and the species that had always been dismissed. They understood each other now. "Captain," said formally, "when this exercise ends, the Alliance Council will meet to discuss permanent changes to our military structure. I intend to propose that humans be given a special designation, not as a fighting force, not as support units, as strategic advisors to every species in the Alliance." Raised an eyebrow. "That is a significant proposal." "It is necessary. What you taught us in 6 months has made us stronger than 500 years of leadership. We would be fools not to recognize that." "Many will oppose you." "Let them oppose. I will ask them one question. Were you on Training World 7? Did you see what the humans did? If not, you have no right to speak." Showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. "I have many scars, many victories, many soldiers who follow me without question. My word carries weight, and I choose to use that weight to lift up your species." "Why?" The question was simple, but it carried everything. Was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was softer than had ever heard it. "Because I was dying, my soldiers were dying, my entire species was failing. And in that moment when I had nothing left, when I was ready to meet death like a true warrior, I looked to the back of the battlefield." He paused. "And I saw humans, calm, prepared, fighting not for glory, not for honor, fighting to save everyone, including me." He shook his head slowly. "I have been proud my entire life. Proud of my strength, proud of my scars, proud of my victories. But in that moment I learned what pride really means. Pride is not about what you can do. Pride is about what you are willing to do for others." Felt something tighten in her chest. It might have been gratitude. It might have been sadness. It might have been hope. "My grandmother would have liked you," she said quietly. "I wish I could have met her. She would have told you that you talk too much." Laughed, a real deep laugh that shook the observation deck. "She sounds like a—" She was human. That was always enough. The exercise began on schedule. For 12 hours, the combined fleet fought against simulated enemies. They faced attacks from multiple directions. They dealt with surprise ambushes. They handled communications failures and equipment malfunctions. They did not fall apart. When the aircraft lost coordination, human observers calmly helped them reorganize. When the units scattered too widely, human advisors guided them back into effective formations. When the charged too far ahead, gentle reminders from human tactical officers slowed them down. The exercise was declared a complete success, the highest score ever recorded for a joint military operation. Afterwards, the commanders gathered for a celebration. Food and drink from a dozen worlds filled the banquet hall. Music played. Soldiers laughed and told stories. Stood apart from the celebration. She was on a small balcony overlooking the stars. Below her, the fleet floated in peaceful formation. The exercise was over, but she was already thinking about what came next. Found her there. You should join the celebration, Captain. You earned it. I am celebrating. This is how I celebrate. Stood beside her. He had known her for 15 years. He understood her better than anyone. Are you worried about the council vote? Number will succeed. The other commanders support him. Humans will become strategic advisors to the Alliance. Then what are you thinking about? Looked up at the stars. So many stars, so many worlds, so many possibilities. I am thinking about my grandmother, about what she would say if she could see this. What would she say? She would say that the job is never done. That peace is not a destination. It is a journey that never ends. Turned to face her sergeant. She would say that today we built something important, but tomorrow we must protect it, and the day after that, and every day until we die. Nodded slowly. That sounds about right. She would also say that we should never expect thanks, never expect recognition, never expect others to understand why we do what we do. Allowed herself a small smile. But I think she would be pleased that they finally asked the right question. What question? The question asked on Training World 7. Why do humans sit in the back? And now they know the answer. Yes, now they know. Looked back at the stars. We sit in the back because that is where we can see everything. That is where we can help everyone. That is where we can catch the people who fall. And because that is where we can save the galaxy when it forgets to save itself. That too. The celebration continued below. Aliens from a dozen species laughed and drank together. For now there was peace. For now there was hope. Knew it would not last forever. Nothing lasted forever. But for the first time in her life, she believed that when the next crisis came, humans would not face it alone. The strongest species in the galaxy had learned their lesson. And the species that sat in the back had finally been seen. That was enough. That was always enough. The stars continued to shine. The ships continued to drift. And somewhere in the back of the fleet, humans continued to watch. Ready. Always ready. Because that was what humans did. That was what they would always do. Forever.